need you now.
Oh boy.
I can't believe this. I can't tell you anything. Every time I tell you something, everybody else knows about it. No, I'm mad.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to Smith's Grove. I'm Brandon, and today I've got an interesting review of Halloween Ends. Yeah, not a big fan of this one. I know this is kind of a controversial movie at the moment. You kind of either, there's a few people that are stuck in between. A lot of people are just very strongly opinion one way or the other. Mostly, though, you got your people who are going to defend this to the core and almost kind of to a pretentious level. And then you've got the others who I'm probably leaning more towards at this point, now that I've sat on it for a while, in the I hate this as a steaming pile of garbage side. So let's get into it. Okay, so starting off in the movie, we fast forward a year later after the events of 2018, and this 21-year-old babysitter named Corey Cunningham is babysitting this little boy. I think he's 7 or something like that. So they're going through the night, and they're watching The Thing, which, great movie, right? Oh, perfect to show a 7-year-old, I'm sure. He ends up getting a prank played on him by this little kid. 7-year-old starts fucking with him, and you start seeing, signs of, maybe in this scene, you're expecting Michael to be there. You got signs of that. You get the knife that was on the table earlier is missing. He's going around looking for the kid who's supposed to be going to bed. The kid basically lures him upstairs, like the 3rd floor of this huge-ass house, and locks him in this closet. Turns out Corey is afraid of closets. I mean, who isn't, right? I mean, it's scary, it's dark. But anyway, he gets bested by this 7-year-old like a little punk bitch. And parents come home right around this time's happening. He's slamming, he's kicking the door, he's yelling at the kid. And the parents just happen to walk in the same time that to overhear Corey say, "I'm gonna fucking kill you." And then he gets mad, kicks the door in, and the kid happens to be right there behind the door. The door slams into the kid in a hilarious fashion. Sends the kid flying over the balcony from the 3rd floor all the way down, right in front of his parents. Kasplat. Looks like a doll. Just bounces off the floor. Shocking moment, but also kind of ridiculous at the same time. Purely accidental. Anyway, that's the kickoff movie. Then you get the title card and Halloween 3 font. Right away you feel like the movie's going to be a little different, right? At least that's what they're going for. Cool. Fast forward 3 years later. By this time, it seems like Lori is writing a memoir, and she's bought her a house in town now, and she's kind of living up the grandma life, and she's got her hair and her clothes similar to how she was in the 70s, and Allison's living with her. Allison's a nurse now. Town is struggling. It shows through exposition and a voiceover the events of 2018, the aftermath, people killing each other, committing suicide, basically trying to allude to this big third character, right? This new main character anyway, of maybe not third, but 4th, 5th. This new character of Haddonfield, right, as a whole, and what the evils of Michael and the events of 2018 has done to this town, right? So, and you're going to see a little bit of this throughout the movie. I personally don't think it was done very well. Yeah. So anyway, Corey by this time is working for stepfather in a salvage yard. Shows him showing up late again and just real struggling. He gets picked on by these bullies that are in high school, several years younger than him. They're trying to get him to buy beer illegally, and he's like, "Nah, man," and trying to do the right thing. Then they figure out who he is. They start giving shit about that, and they start kicking the shit out of him in this gas station. Lori shows up, saves the day, decides he's cute enough to introduce him to Allison. Also helps him apparently slash the tires of this car, this bully's car. By the way, it's a fucking marching band. Half of them, they're just all a bunch of goofy dweeb-looking characters that really, I mean, it's like a Stephen King movie and not a old slasher or thriller. It's just a Stephen King. It's kind of ridiculous. A lot of these characters kind of seem like Stephen King. In fact, this whole damn story seems like it was written by Stephen King, which, teach their own, not bad, but it doesn't belong in this. A little later on, the bullies catch up with Corey outside at dark by a bridge, They beat the shit out of him again. Kind of, he tries to stand up for himself, fight back, then they throw him off this bridge. And, he wakes up the next morning, and he stumbles into the sewer for some reason, and down there with the Ninja Turtles and Pennywise the Clown, Michael's been hiding out for 4 years apparently. I guess he's weaker than he was in 2018, which doesn't make sense here. You know, people have tried to make sense out of it. Oh yeah, he's just been sitting down there, and maybe because he was trying to recover from that awful beating that he took in 2018 at the end, even though he got up and completely murdered all of them and seemed just fine long enough to sneak back to his house and kill Karen upstairs. Anyway, he gets down there and Michael springs out and reaches through this wall and starts choking Corey. And right before he bites it, Michael lets go. There's this scene where, like, he looks into his eyes and he's like sees his pain, and we don't know if it's ambiguous. You know, a lot of this movie's ambiguous, so you could interpret that he was just he's seen his eyes and he's seen the pain and what he goes through and what he's done, so he lets him go. And or maybe it's a transfer of power and evilness. I don't know, because Corey leaves the sewer, and then the homeless man that should have been played by Nick Castle, by the way, instead of the Flasher, pops out, and after some weird dialogue and struggle, Corey has to basically stab him kind of in self-defense, and then admits it to Allison. Maybe she thought that he was talking about the little kid. Really weird. A little bit later, they go on a dinner date, and then the creepy 50-year-old cop that had apparently been seeing Allison for whatever reason shows up and kind of like talks to her and is bothering and pisses Corey off, and they get into a fight. Yeah, all in all, a lot of weird scenes, a lot of weird dialogue. Then after that, he lures him into a sewer, and then, much to his delight, Michael kills the guy, and like he tells him to show him how to do it. And then Michael has this weird like gyrating, like seizing moment when he stabs the guy, like he was powering up or getting off, one or the other. Also kind of ambiguous. It's never been a sexual thing for Michael. I can kind of, Laurie mentioned something he kills about him. Every time he kills, he gets more powerful. And this is where the inconsistencies are starting to show up really bad for me, right? Because you've got this 2018 thing where he was beaten down at the end. So it makes sense a little bit why he'd be hiding out in the sewers and hurt, but it's 4 years later. He wouldn't think to just kill more to be stronger. I mean, and he kind of said he kind of left off on a strong note, because he basically got up and murdered everybody else that was there, including the woman with an iron, and then went back to the house and killed Karen. So by all means, he should be stronger again, unless he just decided to hide out for 4 years. No explanation whatsoever. Now, I know in the past, these movies, he's disappeared for years on end. That never seemed to be a thing, though, where he'd just show up later, 20 years later, and then be weaker. Like I said, there's just a lot of... They're not doing a very good job of conveying this. I think it's not hard to kind of make your own interpretation out of it. It's just... when you do it, none of it makes sense. Unless you just really want to lie to yourself and really like this film, it makes zero sense. And it doesn't hold any kind of cohesive story or plot, and it doesn't connect with the other two. I thought H40 was good. Kills was a fun movie, but not great. And this was just completely separate from anything that they try to do with the other two. Just awful. Back to the end of the plot real quick. Basically, Corey's descending into madness seemingly very quickly after the meeting with Michael, and they go on this little bromance trip where they kill the doctor and the nurse that worked with Allison, and she got the promotion over Allison. Michael kills the nurse, and Corey kills the doctor. And after that, he just goes on a bike ride with Allison, and they're talking about leaving, and they get harassed by the DJ, and then they have this weird moment with Laurie at the house where the kid was killed by Corey by accident, and they had some dialogue where she's starting to see it in his eyes that something's not right with him, and she wants him to stay away from Allison. Halloween rolls around. He goes down in the sewers and has this fucking ridiculous towel snapping type fucking locker room bro fight with Michael Myers, right? And he gets the best of this guy, Michael Myers. He gets the best of Michael Myers in this off-screen, on-screen, goofy fucking Scooby-Doo shenanigan type fight. where he wrestles him and then takes his mask.
When your day is long and the night.
And even after all this stupid beta shit and Corey takes his mask and leaves, Michael has the fucking gall to just rise up like the Undertaker stole from him, right? That, like, what? I don't know. Like, it was just a weird sequence, much like a lot of this film. There was a few cool kills later. Corey decides he's going to go on a killing spree now. He's just completely lost it. He's under the guise of Michael Myers now, walking around in Michael Myers mask and jumpsuit. Kills the DJ, his mom, all the bullies, which some of them weren't bad kills. It's a shame that they weren't Michael who's getting the kills, but they weren't bad. Whatever, you know, like it wasn't, I don't think they were probably as creative or as good as anything in kills. Of course, there was a much higher body count in kills. Anyway, he kills them. He kills, the stepfather gets in the way, actually, and after one of the bullies tries to get help from him, ends up shooting him in the head. And that was pretty ridiculous. He goes after Laurie at this point. Laurie, who seems to be on to him at this juncture, calls a suicide hotline and makes this whole ordeal and then sets him up. He comes upstairs to the house, and I guess he's going to kill Laurie, get that over with so she won't be in the way of Allison, and Laurie shoots him in a decent scene where, you know, she fakes that and says, "You don't think I'd really kill myself, did you?" It was an okay sequence. He stabs himself in the neck, knowing that Allison was going to walk back in the house at the same time as Laurie is pulling the knife out of his neck, thinking that Laurie killed Corey, thus upsetting Allison, and Allison storms off. So, just goofy shit, right? So he's bleeding out, he's dead, or seemingly dead. Michael shows up. Michael's been kind of stalking him and everybody at this point, kind of watching him, you know, his little protege do his thing. And Michael shows up to reclaim his shit. And he gets his mask, and he decided that he's had enough of Corey's shit, and he just snaps his neck, ending anything, which I'm not a big fan of this character, don't get me wrong, but ending any kind of possibilities for a spin-off or side thing for Corey that people were seemingly thinking was gonna maybe happen or could have happened, or talking about how they could. I don't know. People that like this movie have some weird excuses. And don't get me wrong, it's cool if you like the movie. I'm not going to be one of those guys that, you know, say, "Oh, you're not a fan if you're not a real fan if you like this movie," and all that shit. I'm not going to do that. I don't think that. You know, I like Halloween 3 a lot. I like, I'm getting to the point now where a case could be made with me for Halloween 6. I really dig Halloween 6. I know the story's garbage, but Myers is pretty dark and scary in that, and there's more of them than there is in this. Anyway, Michael shows up in Laurie's house, kills Corey. Here comes the grand finale, right? This is the final, the main event. This is what we've all been waiting for, that they should have been promoting a little bit better throughout this movie instead of just fucking trailers. And she gets the best of him pretty quick. You know, it was kind of a knockdown, drag out fight for a minute or two, and then she gets the best of him, pins him down, stabs him. After she has him pinned down, Allison shows back up. They basically like slit his wrists and stab him and cut him up a bunch of times and then drain his blood, and he bleeds out. He's dead. He's gone. And then just to solidify it and to make sure everybody in town knows about it, they have this ritualistic kind of drive into the junkyard where they find this shredder, this industrial shredder, this grinder, right? And they throw his body in front of everybody in the town. So now the town can start healing, and that was it. You know, Allison leaves town, and Laurie and Hawkins kind of reconcile a little bit, whatever. They just decide they can love each other now, I guess. I don't know. And she finishes her book or memoir or whatever, and keeps the mask on their table. You know, that was Halloween Ends. Now that I've done the run through, I want to just give you a little bit of an opinion and closing thoughts on this. You know, when I first watched it, it was okay. Like, I'm like, okay, this is not a bad movie. It's not shot bad. The music's not bad. The acting was okay in places. I thought the dialogue was eh. Most of the characters were pretty detestable in this. I was waiting and hoping for more Myers than I got. Laurie was okay for the most part. She kind of seemed to be on her game. I didn't hate Laurie in this. Hawkins took a back seat. Allison kind of took a back seat as far as she was just dealing with shit in her own way, but she was kind of almost a brat 4 years later. Corey was not as good of a character to me as a lot of people seem to think. Maybe some people like Corey. I think he's a beta. I don't think that he's good for this role. His descension to madness was a little bit too quick for my liking. You know, this wasn't exactly Jack Nicholson in The Shining. You know what I mean? Like, where this literally happened over the course of like 3 or 4 days, right? I mean, yeah, he's been struggling for a couple of years after the death of that kid, but I mean, what really snapped him into, like, what really put him in this mode where he just ascended fast was after the encounter with Michael. But they didn't really explain all that well and why that was a thing. The buddy duo, the duo killers didn't really do it for me. You know, this is not Scream. This is a Michael Myers movie. This is not a Corey Cunningham movie. This is not a Stephen King thriller. This is a Halloween film. This is a Michael Myers film. This is an anthology film, apparently, right? So I feel like it just came off as a little bit pretentious, and we didn't exactly get what they were selling. I don't mind different moves. I don't mind a little bit of boldness. I don't mind a different direction, but not in a third act. The third act of a movie needs to be conclusive. But it doesn't need to be conclusive in a way as where only 10 minutes of the movie was conclusive of the last 2 films, and then the rest of the film was just its own thing. It's ridiculous. It's preposterous. It's pretty clear they didn't really have a line of sight from the first one being Halloween 40 in this trilogy to the end. It felt disconnected, even more so than Kills did. Kills, I have a much better appreciation for Kills now than I did before. Ends was a big nothing burger for me. And the longer I go, the longer I think about it, the more I see, I'm like, this is just not good, guys. You know, at this point, we did a re-ranking on the Macho Movie Madness channel over there. I suggest you guys check that out too. We got some cool versus episodes over there. We re-ranked these films after Ends came out, and I put Ends way up the top, man. Like, you know, I'm not a big fan of the Halloween zombies, the zombie Halloweens. I'm not a big fan of Resurrection or Halloween 5, but I actually put, surprisingly, even to me at the time, I put Resurrection 5 above Ends, just because they felt like classic Halloween movies to me, and they were at least fun, and they at least had more Myers. And I know that might sound crazy because, you know, Resurrection wasn't a great story, and it had Busta Rhymes. You know, Busta Rhymes can't be beating things. You know, you can't be producing a bunch of shit. And I think what's confusing people is the way this film was directed and done, right? Like, I think it was a top-notch movie as far as directing and shots, cinematography, music, all that stuff. Even acting was better in this than Halloween Resurrection. It's just, you've taken everything about Halloween and Michael Myers, and you didn't turn it up on its head. You just tossed it to the side for this completely different story, just within that universe. And, you know, if you want to do an anthology movie, that's fine, but you probably should have done something with this and then moved on to that. It's not doing it for me, dog, you know? I would probably have to rate this. I don't know what I did on our other review, but I would say, you know, I'd probably have to rate this probably in that 2.5 range out of 5. Just because the music and it was shot halfway decent, you know, it wasn't overly cheesy. It just didn't make a lot of sense, and it just had a completely different direction than it needed to for a trilogy, you know, especially, and that's what I want to, you know, drive home the point more, is it's not just because it was a different Halloween film that I find this ridiculous. It's because they can't be consistent with what they're trying to tell from Halloween 2018 to Kills to here, and it's just none of them really seem to fit together. This really doesn't fit with that. They can't stay consistent as to what Michael gets his power from, or what he is. Is he a man? Is he something more? Is he capable of something more? Is he transferring powers to Corey? Is there supernatural elements? Is there not supernatural elements? They just can't seem to stay on course. And where I thought that Halloween 40 did a great job resurrecting the franchise, Kills was just okay. This just kind of sent it off into a whole different direction that I'm not even sure they knew what they were doing, unless they were just trying to be pretentious. You know, that's all I can say. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to do it this way. You know, the marketing for this series with David Gordon Green and Jamie Lee Curtis and all of them, you know, the first movie was all about how he wasn't his sister, right? He wasn't Michael wasn't Laurie's sister. This makes him much scarier, and he's more unpredictable. And it's about trauma, right? It's about trauma with these three Strode women, right? And that only lasts so long. By kills and by ends, you've almost lost a way to keep Laurie and Michael together in a sense, right, to finish their chapter. So you got to find these weird cop-out ways, like a Dr. Sartain or a Corey Cunningham, to keep Michael and Laurie crossing paths. And it just doesn't seem to work. If you're going to have a Jamie Lee Curtis in a movie, if you're going to have these characters in a movie, and you need them to cross paths because they're the stars, right? They're the Frasier and Ali's. So you've got to find a way, and we, as a whole, the fan base, everybody, has been used to this familiar setting, right, for this story for years. And it might be goofy, but it's kind of these movies' own little charm, right? It's kind of their own little route, this route line, right, that you follow, this formula. And you don't necessarily have to have it, but I feel like getting rid of it only made it a little bit worse, or they just didn't truly understand what they were going to do with Michael as an entity, as a person, as a whatever. And I feel like at this point, since you only kind of made a little joke about it in the first one, it really doesn't even matter at the end. I feel like you could have probably done more with that brother-sister relationship in this, and it probably would have made more sense in ends even, because the whole entire town, including Allison, was blaming Laurie for the events by the end of it, or even by the middle of it. Like, it's so ridiculous. I just don't think they thought these things through, and maybe COVID hurt it, but either way, you know, it's something that if you're gonna be making these fucking movies, you've got to think about the stuff as a whole. You've got to think about what you did before, and you got to think in that editing room what you're doing. I don't know. Anyways, guys, you know, I've made this review a little bit longer than I wanted to originally, so that's my thoughts. I feel like, you know, getting rid of Halloween 2 and all that, retconning that shit and starting over again and not doing the brother-sister thing may have actually hurt it after so many years of it being there. I don't think that this was the right direction. Luckily, it seems to be over. Corey Cunningham's gone, and hopefully we can move on to something else, maybe squeeze in a different timeline or an old timeline. I don't care. I'm definitely interested in seeing where this franchise goes, because it surely isn't the end. As controversial as this may become, I think this movie's just dog shit, and only time will tell how I feel later in 10 years, or how other people feel. As of right now, I don't see this having the same turnaround that Halloween 3 did, because Halloween 3 isn't Michael Myers. It had a rocky start, it had some rocky marketing, but, you know, there's a certain level of charm. There's nothing else really like that movie. This movie here is just a Stephen King afternoon novel that has been done before. It's just, you threw it it's a short story that you threw into a Michael Myers conclusion film. It just doesn't work. Anyways, guys, that's it. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Comment down below what you think. I want to hear from you guys. Also, be sure to check out our other channel at Macho Movie Madness. Andrew and Chris and I do some movie reviews and stuff over there. But yeah, appreciate you watching. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.